Okay, Shez, 2025 is upon us. There are so many storylines. There are just a crazy number of things. As many as five, six rookies on the grid. I don't know what the exact number is. Feels like everyone's a rookie this season. Lewis Hamilton going to a new team. Max
Rookie.
Verstappen having a new teammate. Yes, that's right. George Russell having the next coming of perhaps a Max Verstappen. Who knows? We'll find out. Shaz, I want to get to the storylines that I think matter the most, right? We've talked a lot about drivers, but what I'm fascinated about is we're heading into this last season of this particular rule set, if you will, this formula. And there are three teams that I think we can say that are confidently in the mix for both championships. That is McLaren, that's Ferrari, and of course Red Bull. Now, I think many of you will come back and say, "Oh, Mercedes could be in there. They look pretty good in testing." The reality is, testing is testing is testing. We don't really know exactly where Mercedes will be. There are some estimates of them being in the top three. There are others, and like Helmut Marko, who've come and said, "Well, Mercedes are going to be fourth." So, for the purpose of this debate, I'm just going to assume that Mercedes will try to get the best result they can in the hope of aiming for a 2026 championship for both categories. And maybe you will disagree with that and let us know in the comments. But, Shez, let's talk about the teams that finished top three last year, right? And I want to really ask you which team has the most pressure on them? And here's what I want to present to you. You have in Red Bull Max Verstappen with a brand spanking new partner who is presumably better than Checo Perez and Liam Lawson. Max Verstappen is going for a fifth consecutive championship. Okay. It's only been done once before. Am I right there, Chess? But Red Bull are clearly not the quickest car this season going in. In fact, we have Max Verstappen on the record saying he does not expect Red Bull to win in Melbourne. Could be nothing, but generally Max doesn't say things out there just for the heck of it. We know that. You have the next team in Ferrari that have Lewis Hamilton going for his eighth championship. And I can go on and on about the storyline there. It kind of makes for itself. You also have Charles Leclerc there, who is vying for his first championship, and we can debate which one's more important or not. Nonetheless, we think that Ferrari will be in the mix, even if it's not from the start of the season. And then finally, at McLaren, you have the MCL 39 that appears to be head and shoulders above everyone else. And whether it's Lando or Oscar, and we've debated who will come out on top this season, it is evident that a McLaren driver will probably have the best chance to win their first championship. So I look at all these three scenarios and I tell myself, wow, which team is under the most pressure to win? You have two teams that presumably have drivers that will go at it with each other in Red Bull and Ferrari. Max doesn't have anyone to worry about, but they don't have the quickest car either. Who needs to make the biggest push to win this championship this year, and who do you think has the upper hand there?
Uh, I mean, those are two separate questions, aren't they? Who has the most pressure? It's tricky, isn't it? Because we're in the final season of a rule set, and we've got again. It always seems to be like this when a big technical regulation comes up. The biggest technical rule change in the history of Formula One. Everything's going to be different. It will be, but given that, I feel like you have two teams that are in building phases at the moment, right? So Ferrari and McLaren. McLaren, yes, they won the constructors last year, but they're still on this upward trajectory from their nadir in sort of 2018, 2017. And they're trying to build themselves back up again to being the big force, and they're building up resources and infrastructure to uh, to try and build that to turn themselves into titans. And Ferrari are also doing the same thing, restructuring under Fred Vasseur, strengthening their driving roster. Red Bull, I think, are the ones that are the most under pressure because they're the ones that, and I've said this before, right? In this era where it's been about aerodynamic prowess, anywhere from 2010 right up until 2025, this season, they've had Adrian Newey in their back pocket, who has been sort of guiding them initially as a technical director and then stepping off a little bit, but still giving those little nuggets that allowed them to be dominant at the beginning of this rule set too. But they're not going to have him next season to guide their car. And on top of that, where McLaren have got a tried and trusted manufacturer deal with Mercedes, in an era where actually having a customer engine isn't the same as it was before. You get all of the same um, spec, you get the same engine modes, maps, all of it. It's all the same. You basically get the same unit as the class leading car. And look what they did with it last year. It's not so much of an issue going into 2026 for them, but everything else is being built. Red Bull don't have that. Red Bull are going out on a limb. They've lost Honda, who were really, really on it. 2021, 2022, when the engine power unit rules were frozen, and now they're trying to do it on their own in a completely new formula. Um, it's unknown. We don't know if they're going to get the opportunity that they're going to get this season regularly. Again, it feels to me a lot like 2025 might be the last hurrah, as it were, for Red Bull. This almost continuous streak of excellence that they've had since 2010 um, may well be coming to an end. So they need to make it count. And Max will be the only thing left at the end of all of this. And he may well just decide that he wants to leave as well if they don't play their cards right. That's me.
Yeah, I think it's fair to look at Red Bull's situation because they are the ones that are still the hunted, even though they didn't win the constructors last year. They certainly are in the drivers' championship, and Max has the opportunity to do something that's only been done once before. So from that standpoint, I get it. I really think that the pressure though is mostly on Ferrari this year. I think that they have to really find a way to get either Lewis a championship, his eighth, or Charles one, because I think that they're riding on this sort of momentum of being back in prominence. And a failure this year could mean it could be pretty devastating for them. I mean, they have all the hype, they have all the energy, they have all the good vibes coming off of the Lewis's announcement last year, and all of the good feelings of seeing Lewis in red. But it has to translate into results because Ferrari also, for their part, in this era of the formula, have not done anything remarkable. I mean, the only thing that you can say that is remarkable about them in this era is getting Lewis Hamilton, and the second closest would be their failures under one Mattia Binotto, which is they were just falling precipitously in 2022 when they would have come in with the best chance of getting both Red Bull and Mercedes off of a championship contention season. So I would like to believe that, while Red Bull have all the pressure, they also have the momentum and they have Max who has proven to be an enigma. He can erase all mistakes. And yes, he may not win all those races. He may not have the dominant performances of 2023, but think he can do enough to compete with that car and also be in the heads of most of his competitors. I mean, we know what he did with Lando last year. We know that he would have the upper hand when it goes to wheel racing with the two of them. I really think that Ferrari are going to have also a bit of a headache because if they have a championship winning car, they're going to have to decide who it goes to. And while everything sounds correct right now, it sounds like both drivers would get along. When you're in the heat of a battle and a championship battle, and it's 24 races that goes pretty much 9 months of the year, that's going to be tough. And I think that the pressure is going to be immense on them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I take your point. Yeah, Ferrari, but Ferrari are always under pressure, right? Because they've got the entire Italian media behind them. They've got the entire nation behind them. They're ringing the bells in the churches of Maranello when they win a race. That's the kind of level of devotion that Ferrari get. But that's always there. My reason for saying that perhaps Ferrari can not relax, but have a reason for optimism for the future in a way that Red Bull don't. Red Bull are looking at a much more of a bleak future as far as I can see it. Ferrari are in that phase that they were in 1995 and 1996 when Jean Todt turned up and then lured Michael Schumacher across and then brought across Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne and there was a sense that even if they didn't win it in 96 they weren't going to win it in 96. That car was awful, but there was a sense that there was momentum building. There was a new structure. There was a shielding of the team and its mechanics from the outside world, and that seems to be what we're seeing from Fred right now. A very calm kind of, yes, I understand that Italy is important, that the press is important, and yes, I hear you, but I'm going to protect my drivers. I'm going to protect my team from all of that. And that gives me some optimism that what we're seeing at Ferrari right now is not the Ferrari of Maurizio Arrivabene. We're seeing the Ferrari of Sean Todt. And that for me gives me some optimism. And it should give them optimism as well, in a way, as I say, that I don't think Red Bull have got. This may well be Red Bull's last chance.
I agree with you that Red Bull, this is their last hurrah essentially. But we also don't know what 2026 brings in. And I think one of the problems with Ferrari is that you can't keep waiting for that next opportunity to come through, right? And this might be their year in what is a crowded championship battle to kind of make that happen, because you just never know how things are going to pan out. Could be a DNF here, a fourth place finish thereabouts. And what makes me nervous is how Ferrari are going to manage these two drivers, and they're arguably the best pairing on the grid. If you just put the two of them together, maybe not necessarily individually, but also the most combustible pairing in that regard too, because everyone is, fine and happy right now, but in the heat of a battle, and you can't just have Ferrari show up at Monaco and Monza every year. Like that's not something that's going to fly with the Tifosi, with the Lewis Hamilton fan base too, because if they don't succeed, they're going to hear a lot of heat and noise, and normally an organization would be able to sort of blank it out and kind of put some year heads and kind of move forward. But you wouldn't be able to do that with Ferrari. They're very prone to reacting to how public sentiment is. And so that can be a bit worrisome. I do agree with you that having Fred Vasseur there seems like a steady hand, but also like this is going to be what, year 3 of Fred? Like we've got to start being in the mix for something that is a little bit more than just that. They may not necessarily need to win the drivers' championship. They need to look like they're at least capable of winning one, and they haven't looked like that for a while now. That's the worry about. Shez, I want to pivot to McLaren though, because I think there's a compelling case to be made for them too, right? I mean, they're the ones that closed out last season as constructors champions. You would have to assume that going into this year, that since they have the upper hand, that they would be able to make this happen, no? So if not now, then when for them too? I mean, you can argue that 26 may not be their time either. Mercedes could be back, and Ferrari could be there, and who knows what happens elsewhere. But Aston Martin would presumably be back too in 26. So if not now, then when for McLaren too?
I think the same sort of thing applies to McLaren as it does for Ferrari. In that there's a lot more optimism for them than there is for Red Bull. If you're talking about pressure for McLaren uh, in this season, I think it's not so much on McLaren; it's much more on Lando. Like Lando needs to
Mm.
prove that he is, uh, better than
It's the
Oscar,
guy.
like, and is able to be backed more than his teammate. He's worth backing, and that he could take a title fight to Max Verstappen. That's where the pressure comes from. I think McLaren should have some optimism that again they've built a structure that works. They've poached the right people, and they have put them in the right places. And I think Zach Brown and Andrea Stella, Zach Brown more than Andrea Stella, I keep coming back to this, but that's where this all started. Deserves a lot of credit for doing that, but that hard work has been done. It's now time for them to reap those rewards. And again, I come back to that fact that this isn't about this for them isn't about sort of being worried about what's going to happen in 2026. They have lots of reasons to be optimistic. In lots of ways, they're like the opposite of Red Bull, whereas McLaren have don't need to think too much about the constructors. That they're on the momentum slide for that, but their driver needs to up his game. Red Bull are the complete opposite. Their driver is the guy that has nothing to prove, but his team need to prove to him that they're good enough to deserve
Their
him.
words.
And that's why I worry for Red Bull,
Mhm.
that's where the pressure lies. But I guess nobody's going to put more pressure on Red Bull than themselves.
And Max. Yeah.
And
No,
Max.
that's true. And the only thing about McLaren is, again, if they have to figure out if this is their driver pairing moving forward or
Yeah,
not. And being in the championship battle will say a lot. To your point, is Lando the guy or not? Is Oscar really the guy or not? Like, okay, yeah, we see great potential, but what does that pan out into in terms of
Who are
results?
they
So
going
we'd
to
have to see.
who are they going to replace him with though?
No, who knows? George Russell, because he's really good. So who knows? It could be that.
Yeah, I think Russell will be a
Could
great
be
fit for
that.
McLaren.
It would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All
for
right.
sure.
So on that note, let us know who you think is under most pressure. Is it McLaren? Is it Ferrari? Is it Red Bull? Or is it Aston Martin? Who knows? It could be them too. Who knows? They got to prove that Adrian Newey is worth it or not. Uh, please like, please subscribe, please give us a comment. We are reaching the point where it's really difficult for us to respond to every comment, but we will read as many as we can and respond to as many as we can. We will see you in the next one.